The Grand Portage Band of Chippewa has been subsisting on lake trout for all of its history.
That's the culture of the reservation, I guess, to be a fisherman. He was running his own nets when he was like 12 out here, just to feed his sisters and his family.
When you think of food as sort of one of the primary means by which people exist, it's really important to make sure that your food source is stable and is sustainable. Sea lamprey came into the Great Lakes in the early 1920s and really decimated lake trout populations. They're a long eel-like creature, about 20 inches long. They suck the blood of the fish. Their mouth is a round sucker with lots of rasping teeth. It's one of those things that just sort of gives you the shivers. An average sea lamprey to grow to adulthood kills about 30 to 40 pounds of fish flesh. There was a point at which Grand Portage tribal fishermen would go out and set their nets and not catch any lake trout at all. When you're not teaching the younger generations to fish because it's impractical to go out there and set nets, there's a loss of the culture right there. Today we're doing a survey to see what kind of lamprey marking rates we're seeing on our lake trout. Lake trout populations crashed in about the 1940s because of sea lamprey invasion and also due to overfishing. It literally took 3 or 4 decades to restore lake trout populations with intensive harvest management and intensive stocking, and in addition to that, intensive sea lamprey control. I think lamprey could definitely be perceived as one of the great success stories for invasive species. With targeted effort, with a scientific process, and with an influx of money, invasive species can be controlled. Collectively, the Park Service and the Grand Portage Band are very concerned about invasive species and are trying to do our best to do surveillance and detection on what invasive species exist here. Invasive species are destroying habitat, they're destroying the native species populations, and it really disrupts the whole ecosystem.
Sweetgrass is important to the Ojibwe people. It's a culturally significant plant. It's used both spiritually and for craft work. We're trying to foster people's relationship with plants. And the invasive species that detract from that are Canada thistle and even some native species that are invasive. And they outcompete and overtop sweetgrass.
Through the Park Service and the tribe's burning of this field here, we hope to rejuvenate and start coming back to kind of begin to manage the sweetgrass. Keep down some of the willows and the poplars that are growing up.
What I've done is I've harvested in one area and then leave it for 1 year and then go back to another area. And it seems to work like that it'll come back up again if you leave it alone for a year. I want to pass it down to the children in Grand Portage, family, relatives, and just have them carry it on. It's so important.
The reason I care about sweetgrass in the cultural landscape is I want to see people like Sharon here using the resource. I want to know that I've done something to foster that relationship. Why this is important is for the relationships that the people have with the plants here. This is where the village was. They can look across this landscape and they can remember where their elders lived, where their grandparents lived.
Our sweetgrass is here, the fishing, the wild ricing. We'll never lose that as long as we work with it.
I've been ricing since I was 14. It's a part of me, it's in my blood. This time of year I can just smell it almost in the air. For the natives here, it's a sacred, it ties in with our migration story. Why we're here is because of the rice. That's why we're here, was to find the food that grows on water.
The two main invasives that are encroaching on wild rice would be purple loosestrife and the Phragmites. The piece of ground that's taken up by these aquatic invasives is ground that's not going to be used by rice or the native vegetation type that would naturally be in that area. Our first step is to educate the public, to help them recognize what should be there and what should not be there, and then to help them realize how these things are spread and how to avoid spreading them.
It's not moving firewood. It's not spreading seeds. It's making sure that your boots and gear are clean of seeds and soil. It's allowing your fishing equipment and other recreation equipment that you use in the water to dry. All of these are just easy preventative measures so that we can preserve what's out there for generations to come.